Hey everybody, welcome to Hit and Hustle. We're on from IRSportsDaily.com. We're on our ISD TV YouTube channel, talking Notre Dame football with Jamie and Greg. We're going over the Fiesta Bowl. We don't want to rehash too much stuff. It's not the most pleasant memories for Notre Dame fans, but we kind of thought this is a way to kind of go over some key plays in the game. Some things that obviously didn't go right, maybe personnel wise for Notre Dame, scheme wise that were maybe better than some people thought. Obviously, things that went against Notre Dame, reffing wise, we're gonna go over as well. And in general, we're just gonna kind of review some things in the game, and I think you're gonna see that there's so many pieces there, specifically on Notre Dame's defense, where one or two plays could have went this differently, and it could have changed like major complexion of the game, and not just the score and the outcome, or whatever, but like I mean, just big yards and big plays, and that I think really stood out from the game.
Yeah, and I think talking to people about the game afterwards, because we were talking about like, do we want to do a show like this, because it's like bringing up just the wound, right? Like you're reopening the wound or whatever. But I think that people have been talking a lot about like tempo and how that affected the team, and tempo versus scheme versus personnel versus the setup of how it worked with the coaching staff, right? So how it worked with Marcus Freeman not calling the defense, and how it worked with Elston, and how that affected things. And I feel like, and I wonder if you feel the same, I feel like tempo exacerbated basically all of the issues that could have come up with the way that Notre Dame structured their defensive operation. I feel like tempo kind of exacerbated all of those problems throughout the game.
100%. And I know we'll get into it, but I think it's something that I talked about on Power Hour. I know it's something I talked about with you privately. Mike Elston being the defensive line coach, when you're talking about the structure of it, there's a lot on your plate in terms of rotations and getting guys in and out. And when there's tempo, I mean, that makes it especially hard. And then when maybe they're showing something personnel wise that maybe you weren't as prepared for as you should have been. Like, so then when they went 10 personnel, obviously spread them out. They have there's one back, no tight ends, 4 receivers out, spread out wide. And Notre Dame wasn't ready to match personnel. And, and you can say that's on Marcus Freeman. That's on Mike Elston. That's on the entire defensive staff, really. Mm-hmm. Right. Chris O'Leary up top, like that's the same kind of thing, right? And I think even when you look at what Mike Elston, when he was calling the defense in 2016 during that interim similar situation, he was the linebackers coach then, and he was also up top, and that's a very different dynamic than being on the field. And I mean, he's never called the game from the field, and as the defensive line coach doing it too. So I think that was a very big factor.
Yeah, and also like it negates the tempo, negates the scheme, right? And you'll see that when we show it to you, it's like it doesn't. If they're moving fast and your players are tired, the scheme doesn't really matter, because they aren't as sharp, right? They're almost going through the motions, and you're going to see it on the offense too, because I think a lot of people have been like, well, I've seen on ISD message board, people talking about like their players are playing a bunch of snaps too. Like their players are playing tempo too. Like why is it only affecting us? And you'll see like their players are dragging ass too. But there's one player who isn't, and because that player isn't running around on every single play, and that's the quarterback. And when they're going tempo and you have linebackers who are chasing all over the place, and then they get free runs at the quarterback who is just turning and throwing, or he's turning and handing off, right? He's not running around. He is not tired like everybody else is. And so then you get a free run at the quarterback, and he just sidesteps, and now he's running through the secondary. And that's where, breakdowns happen. It's not scheme. it's not, having a bad plan. It's just the natural. This is what happens when you get fatigued players playing multiple plays, in a row where they're continually snapping the ball. 30 seconds left on the play clock, 32 seconds left on the play clock. It just like it makes the whole thing, your scheme doesn't even matter at this point. So,
but I mean, I think you even see in the first in the game, and I know you'll pull up the very first drive that Oklahoma State scores.
you want me to
And
pull it
it
up right now?
was, yeah, pull that one up. JD Bertrand, this is a pretty rough series for him, as we'll
Right.
kind of go through. Free shot of the quarterback here.
Right here.
1 and 10, they're inside the 20, right? So they're running a cross dog, right? And that allows Bertrand to come in free. So you see up first, up near the line, approaching the line, that's Drew White. He's coming in. Bertrand's coming in behind it.
He's coming.
No one
in
there.
here.
No
Yeah.
one there. No
Right.
one
So
there.
you have a free run, and
you got two guys blocking the defensive end.
Right.
No one blocked.
Right.
It's absolutely it's a bust up front by Oklahoma State. Perfect call by Mike Elston. You know what? I mean, we just criticized everything. This is the perfect call. They had it. All of a sudden, it's going to be second and very long. Misses it, right? Misses it. Back sneaks out. You also see Kaiser obviously misses that, misses the tackle in the open field. And if you just bring that back again for a sec, Greg, with Kaiser, he has the back in man.
Right.
And I guess he thinks this is going to be a sack, or he's got to drop off of it, or that back is in, so I don't got to come up. And that's why he drops off. And that's why he's there. And then obviously he's just, I mean, that's a lot of ground to cover there. That's why he gets beat basically there. And it ends up being, gain of 12 or whatever, 13, whatever. Should have been a loss of 7 or whatever. That's how much it can change. And the next one, I mean, it really just comes down to you got a chance to hit a guy right in the hole, unblocked.
Yeah.
And I know Jalen Warren. No, actually, I don't even think this is Jalen Warren.
It's
I
the
think
backup.
it was Brown. Yeah, it was Brown. You got to make the tackle, man. Like, you have to make the tackle. And so all of a sudden, this ends up being like it was a 23-yard gain, I believe.
Yeah.
They're in Notre Dame territory. Just like that. And this was, early in the game, right? First quarter. First quarter, they had, 4 plays the first drive, 3 plays, I think the second, 3 and out on the next drive. So no excuses. Obviously, later in the drive, DJ Brown also missed tackle for loss. Right? Perfect position. Defense is set up right. Players got to make plays, right? And so as we say that there's problems with some of the coaching, and I know everyone talking about the second half, well, they obviously adjusted and Notre Dame didn't adjust. Like it's some of that, but not all of that. There's a lot of it is personnel and guys not getting it done. And I, we don't want to pick on JD Bertrand, but when it's right there in front of you, what are you going to do? Like, you have to mention that kind of thing.
The other part too is it gets the drive off and running, right? And so this is when the tempo comes in, because shortly after that, and we'll pull it up here one more time. Shortly after that, because that gets their quick tempo. So this is the play after. You throw a swing pass out to the back, right? And so you tackle him, right? You've had now the backup. You've got the backup defensive line in the game right now.
Yeah.
They've played 3 or 4 plays on this drive already. All right. And now they're going fast. Well, you're going to see the back. He's going to tap his head. Okay. So the back taps his head. He needs to come out. So they changed the back. They changed their personnel, right? And that allows Notre Dame to be able to.
As soon as you do that, they get to sub. Yeah.
They get to sub. And you see the ref here. He's
waiting on the ball.
Like, he's waiting on the ball. Like, hey, they
giving
can
them
change.
a chance to sub.
Right. And he's looking at the other guy, but Notre Dame doesn't make a change. Right. They stay in their defense. And they went into dollar, your favorite thing. So so they don't make a change. They put in Jalen Warren. And so then, okay, let's go. They go fast. They run outside zone. Aaronsberger
gets reached.
yeah,
Bad job by him.
Get upfield. I mean, he's not touched until he's way down the field there.
And that's one of the things too in this game, and it's something that I'm planning on writing about in 6 thoughts. With the number 2 defensive line specifically in this game, but overall in the season, Notre Dame's got some questions about who's going to kind of step up, because a guy like Aaronsberger, still very raw, still haven't seen enough of him to say, man, this guy's going to be a player. I mean, he sure looks like could be a player, but we haven't seen it yet. And then you question on that specific play right there, if that's Myron Tagovailoa-Mosa on that play, is he getting reached? Is he getting reached, or is he making that play, right? Or is he forcing that guy upfield? They has to cut it back inside. All of a sudden, it's like a 1-yard gain instead of like a first down, right? So, yeah, that is 100% like. And to be fair to Mike Elston, that's a lot to ask of him to do that. And you have to have somebody, whether that's up in the booth or on the field, as soon as you see subs, you say, that's our chance. We have to.
We have to move.
Especially when a team is a tempo team going in. It's not like they didn't show this and this is they ran as many plays as anybody in the country. They're like top 20 in the country, right? In plays per game. It's a tempo team. And even when they haven't been successful, they've been a tempo team. So that was a mistake. And 100%, you can say Aaronsberger don't get reached, not a good job by him, but that's coaching. That's coaching, having to be able to match the personnel and do that with tempo.
Right. And it's one thing for Aaronsberger, right? Like, he knows not to get reached, right? But at the same time, they're moving quickly. He's not used to this, right? He's not used to this sort of operation where
maybe he has a false step or whatever.
His mind is going, right? He's not really thinking like that. That's the kind of thing that it gets your mind moving and you're not totally focused on your keys.
Maybe the call got in late. Who knows, right? Yeah.
Right. And we'll see another example where calls are coming in and players are looking to the sideline. They're not really clued in. And another thing, we were talking about Bertrand earlier, and obviously we showed a couple of mistakes that he made. So I was looking it up today. He played 82% of the snaps this year.
Yeah.
Last year,
obviously.
Yeah. Last year, the 2 will linebackers basically split, right? So it was Shane Simon and Maris Leofau. Shane Simon had the most snaps last year at will at 297. So this was about 40% of the will snaps. That's probably around what Bertrand should have been this year, and he was forced into playing basically the main role. I mean, he was the will linebacker, and if he wasn't, they took him out in nickel or something like that when they weren't, when they were doing something different.
And we should say that's not the fault of coaching of them getting out. This is what they were at personnel wise because of the injuries in the year. Yeah. Because obviously, if Maris is healthy, well, I mean, he's going to play the majority of snaps. Bertrand would be the guy spelling him. It would be much different. If Shane Simon was healthy, he would have been playing, right? So the previous year, right, like Jack Lamb was a guy who played and was started in some packages, didn't even play, didn't even get in, right, last year. So that's kind of where they were at. And then you had Prince Coley, who was a rover in camp, and then, he wasn't ready to play. That's why you're like, why didn't they play Coley? I mean, everything we saw from him, he wouldn't have been ready to play in this game or play at a level that he needed to.
And it's the Fiesta Bowl, right? Like you're playing a top, this team was 2 inches away from being in the playoff. So you're playing that caliber of team, inserting him in that situation. That's not fair to him. That's not fair to the team. And Bertrand, right? We're highlighting him, on a blitz, right? Who the best blitzer at linebacker on the team was Maris last year.
Yes,
but beyond JOK, but of the people coming back, Maris is the guy. Like that. Yeah, he killed North Carolina on these types of plays, and he's not available. And so, for Bertrand, when he's already played way too much this year. It's not his fault. It's not the staff's fault. It's just the way it is, you know, the way it went with the injuries and that sort of thing. But, you know, we show those clips just to show it's not so much that the defense had a bad plan all the time, right? Plays are getting made by the other team, and Notre Dame is missing out on plays. And so, you know, when people ask us, you know, what's wrong with the defensive plan, we come up with these examples to say, well, not everything, right?
Yeah.
You're making calls, you're getting guys in the right position. Sometimes it's you know, sometimes it's player error, and that's just the nature of it.
So I mean, in saying that, we're gonna get into something where they didn't have a great plan for this, and they adjusted to it later. And you give credit to Oklahoma State playing 10 personnel. Hadn't shown it a lot, right? That's something that they had talked about where, you know, they weren't. That's something they brought out to win this game, right? They brought out for this game. I believe the first time they ran it was on the 6th series. A lot of series in this game. Obviously, there was it was pretty a lot of possession in this game. The 6th series on offense, where they got into field goal range, missed the field goal. So they had seen it already on the one time already. You can understand how they came out. Maybe they weren't prepared. They didn't have like nickel ready right away, etc. Okay. But then it's the final possession of the half. Everybody knows how this went down. You're in 10 personnel here. So you got them spread out, you know, one back, 4 receivers. Notre Dame's in base. They're in base here. And this isn't just base against, as soon as you see 4 receivers run out, that's on the coaches to say.
You know what they're doing.
100%. You 100% the coaches, that's like half of coaching defense is seeing what the personnel goes out and saying, we got a matching personnel, right?
Yeah.
And you understand, and I understand later on, they did match personnel and things didn't go well. I understand that, right? But if you get beat that way, you get beat. Fine, right? But getting beat this way, I mean, it's inexcusable, really. And so you're in base. You see right there the linebacker at the top there on the left. That's Jack Kaiser. Well, oh no, sorry, on the right. Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
And he's going to be in a situation where he has to cover the slot. And if that's okay, well, first of all, you see him miss a tackle here.
Right.
Not good, right? But if he's got to carry that guy to the flat, that's a play that he should make. It's a lot different when he has to carry that guy vertically. And if it's Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, he's a freak. Whatever. He could cover a slot. He showed. He was like covering Amari Rogers last year for Clemson. That makes sense. But Jack Kaiser is like an inside linebacker playing rover, essentially, because they need him to, right? And even if that's Isaiah Pryor, that's not a situation where you want their best slot against Isaiah Pryor, right? Who's more of a safety / linebacker, right? It's still not a good matchup, and they hit that big play.
Even if you make this tackle here, I mean, you're good, right? The clock is running. It's a 5-yard gain. You're okay, but you know you missed the tackle, and now they're off and running. And this is a situation where I feel like Marcus Freeman. You know, I know he's not calling the plays.
Timeout.
I know that he's not.
This is timeout where I see. I'm like,
you got to stop him. You got to say, hey, like we're not in the right defense here, because
and you have Notre Dame timeouts in the bag. Timeouts in the bag at half. What are you saving them for? Right.
So you have Presley here, and you know that Ramon Henderson is on the slot. You know you have Kaiser in 1-on-1 against Presley. You have single high. I'm not totally sure what DJ Brown is doing here, where he ends up over here, like way out of the middle of the field.
Yeah.
But
we don't know the call. We don't know the exact
call.
We
don't know the call.
We don't know the call, so we don't know the thing. But I mean,
where
you're looking at that, you would think, first of all, DJ Brown, not a guy you want are like that. I would want to be the single high guy.
Yeah.
You know, I understand. I wouldn't want him in man coverage either, and that's some of the limitations of DJ Brown.
Right.
But he's not a guy with I think that athletic ability where he has the range to cover a ton of ground, right?
Right.
He's got to be in a good position to be able to do that. So
yeah,
why isn't
so you
he?
just get Bresley here.
Yeah.
What is your minute? I mean, he just runs.
It's just why it's
and Kaiser, like, he has no chance. Like,
there's no chance, and it's
you
not
don't.
fair to him. It's not
Yeah.
fair to him, and I don't even know. And you're like, well, why isn't DJ Brown there? I don't know. I don't know the call. I don't know
Right.
the exact call. Right. That's exactly. But the whole point is Kaiser shouldn't have been in that position. So even then, too, they're going tempo here, and you're still in a bad spot because you're still in base.
Timeout again. Call timeout. They're at the 21, and you got to say to yourself, like, listen, you got to call timeout, and you got to say, hey, we are at the 21-yard line. They cannot score. They need to not be in the end zone. You need to call timeout. You need
if
to
they
say,
get 3,
hey,
fine. They get 3, fine here. Obviously, you don't want to give up 3 at the beginning of the series, but once they're basically on the edge of the red zone, you're like, get 3, but don't give up. You can't give up 6, right? And obviously, they do give up 6.
Right. So you blitz. They're blitzing the house. I mean, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is one of these things that we were talking about too, where, I mean, they have pressure.
Yeah.
And Jason Ademilola blatantly held. You could see him like flailing, whatever, like the I'm being held. You can see he's being held. His, jersey gets pulled down, his shoulder pad, so his shoulder pad's popping out. It's just a horrible missed call. It's a horrible, and he's right by the play, so it's not like you wouldn't be able to. It's not like he's on the backside and it's like, he's not going to make the play, so we're not going to throw the flag. No, I mean, it was a horrible missed call, right? Yeah. And so, but I mean, we can talk about that, and that is a big call because all of a sudden now they're out of field goal range, right? Yeah. And they're having to reset. Tempo's all screwed up again. I mean, that's obviously a big no call. But the whole point, should have never been in that position.
Right.
Shouldn't have never been in that position. And I mean, that is 100% on. It's on Elston. It's on Marcus Freeman. I mean, it's on the entire defensive staff. I just don't. I mean, to me, it's like I don't understand how that happens in that situation.
It's interesting too because I think that when these things happen, everyone assumes, oh, they must be in prevent.
This is I had conversations with people about this.
They hardly ever play prevent.
No,
they're always like. What was the other game where I remember we had talked about this earlier in the year? Everyone was like, they gave it up again. They're in the prevent defense, and they weren't then either. They were in single high man, and
I think a lot of people don't understand what prevent defense is, and it's not like they're dropping 8 and everybody's 20 yards back. That's not how they were playing it.
Right.
If anything, that would have been better. Right. That would have been better in that situation, right? I wouldn't have minded that. And then all of a sudden you're deciding you're going to give it up and then tighten up later on. Like I'm not a big fan of prevent, but I'm just saying it's better than what they did in that situation.
Man out of base, it was always going to get beaten like that.
Yes,
always.
Yeah,
and the call then, like even to bring the house at when they had just moved the ball like 50 yards, it like to bring the house then, like you already have guys scrambling, and the way that it went, it was just like that seemed like definitely not prevent. You're the play that Notre Dame got Oklahoma State with Leak and Tyree, like that was available to Oklahoma State if they wanted it, right? Because Notre Dame was bringing all those players. They only had 4 in the back to cover. It just kind of goes to show, like, I think that's one of those examples where it's coaching error, getting them in the wrong scheme, and then it's coaching error and not seeing like, hey, we're vulnerable here. We need to settle it down.
Yeah.
Right? And I know that you don't like to take a timeout when the clock is running, but the way that they were moving, it was just like you needed to settle down. You needed to get the defense
Yeah.
settled down. So
Just a couple things I wanted to mention on top of all this too. Spencer Sanders pressured 19 times on 19 dropbacks. They sacked him once, obviously in that first drive.
yeah,
And we saw the 2 plays that he made where he was able to avoid, but 7 first downs he got on those 19. So 36.8% of the time, he was getting first downs there compared to, Jack Holm only got 3 on 20. Like, that's a big difference, right? And then the other thing, in 10 personnel, they were in 10 personnel, 33 plays, 9.0 yards per play in 10 personnel. And obviously some of that is they didn't do a good job of matching the personnel.
right.
The other part is, I think you're looking at the weakest part of Notre Dame's thing is the depth and the secondary depth and just secondary talent all around, minus kind of Kyle Hamilton when he hasn't been out there. So that, plays a big factor in it.
Right. And, we saw it in other games too, and this is why we were so afraid of Virginia,
Yeah.
because, I mean,
and
if
Brandon Armstrong was in that game, would have been very interesting to see how
right.
things, I think it was a bad matchup for Notre Dame if Brandon Armstrong was playing. So,
right. Yeah. So, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to kind of add on to that. Like you're getting pressure on Sanders, and I think the thing that we were worried about going into the game is him starting to feel himself a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's basically what happened, right? Like he just started throwing the ball up. And a lot of these aren't very good throws, but he started to feel himself, and he started to feel like, hey, like I can take shots. Like everything I do is turning up gold. And that's what happened. It happened every time, they blitzed him, he would get away from it and he would scramble. And if they didn't blitz him, he would throw it up. He would find someone open. Obviously Clarence Lewis struggled mightily in this game. I've had a lot of questions about what Notre Dame could have done there. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about that, because short of, because they tried a bunch of different things, right? They tried press, they tried off man, they tried some zone. None of it seemed to, totally alleviate the problem. So I was thinking, like, short of just moving him off the boundary, or moving him away from Tay Martin, even though, he got, he gave up catches to other players too. So I wasn't totally sure, like, exactly what you feel like they could have done in that situation.
Well, just right before that too, the one thing that I think of with Sanders, where when you watch the Baylor game and you watch some of his other games before, and he never missed over the plate, to do a baseball analogy, right? Never missed over the plate, never had any turnover where he throws where gave Notre Dame a chance at it, right? Mm-hmm. He always missed. It was always low and away, or he just threw it at a guy's feet. Like it never came back to bite him when he was off, right? So that, I think that was big. With Clarence Lewis, I and I do feel for a guy like that when a guy's going through that game and it's like on tilt and it's all going against him. And people were, malicious after the game, like just really over the line with a lot of the stuff, I think too. And I get it. Everybody's a fan and everybody's just like, get this guy out of here, put this other guy in. I think Notre Dame, obviously, if they thought they had options, they would have went to it. And I think when you look back at it, so Cam Hart, and everyone's like, why isn't some guy on ISD's message board said, why isn't Cam Hart just following Tay Martin wherever he's going around? Well, the issue is that they started the season with Cam Hart on the boundary.
Yeah.
Right. And he didn't play well there. And he actually got benched in the Toledo game. Right. And they had to put Bracey in at the end of the game because they were not confident in Cam Hart. And then they made the switch with Hart to the field. Hart took off and had a very good year. So if they thought that Hart was going to be the guy that they could have switched to the boundary and just do that, 100% they would have done it. But I don't think they had confidence in him. And if you look at earlier in the game too, they tried to give Lewis. I think it's pretty obvious too. Clarence Lewis was hurt. You've watched him kind of down the stretch. I mean, he was kind of laboring and limping at least the last month of the year. So I'm going to guess he's not 100% healthy.
Okay.
So that's part of it. But they put Bracey in there, and he was on Tate Martin, and he got, if you recall, he got beat bad twice.
Yeah.
Once where he just lost him, two drops, right? And the other one where he got beat deep, hit him right here, he drops it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think they had confidence going there. You'd say, well, why didn't they try just somebody else? It's like, so they put in Ryan Barnes, say, right? It's like Ryan Barnes hasn't played all year. He hasn't played all year. All of a sudden, you're going to put him in. And it's like, well, they should just do it. Someone's got to be better. It's like, no, because it's not just about someone getting better. You might kill Ryan Barnes' confidence for his entire career by putting him in a situation like that. Because you're putting in a guy set up to fail, right? And so, and maybe he would have came out, but I would say very small percentage that he was going to do it. So I really think the only thing they could have done is almost similar to what Oklahoma State was doing with Mayer on third downs, where they were bracketing him and they were saying, "Oh, we're going to make other guys beat him." And then Notre Dame did have some of these other guys beat them on there. I think that's what they kind of had to do, especially in the fourth quarter. Is get in a situation where, okay, we're going to bracket Martin and let's get somebody else to be in, because Lewis just didn't. He wasn't even close. Right. Yeah. He wasn't even close. And even when he was close, he just was like not playing the ball. Like, the one thing you could say about it is, I know people are like, man, this guy doesn't deserve to play ever again. Like, whatever. Well, Tariq Bracey was the exact same boat last year. Got benched. Everyone's gone. He got benched for Clarence Lewis. Right. Yeah. And Bracey came back this year, had a much better year. Right. Yeah. Greatly improved. But outside of bracketing on third down, I don't think there was an obvious option, because I think they would have went to it. We've been critical of the coaches and some of the decisions they made and some of the things they should have done in this game. But I don't think there was an easy answer in terms of just replacing him or flipping Hart over to the boundary. If it was that simple, I think they would have done it.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, you're always trying to think of a solution. And for me, like, I didn't think like, okay, there's someone on the bench who's ready to do this, right? Like, they hadn't played Barnes all year. They haven't played Riley all year, so it's like, no, that's not, my only thought in this game was you're just flip-flopping him and Hart would be the only move. Because if this is where not having Kyle hurts, because if Kyle is there, you can put him over the top and you can say, hey, like, don't worry about this guy running by you, because you've got Kyle behind you. So you're it's okay. Just like play physical up front, or play physical and play aggressive. And if they try to throw over the top of you, like we have Kyle there, it's okay. And without that, you don't have that. You can't do that with anybody else, right? So like, we like Ramon Henderson, right? But he's not the number 2 pick in the draft, right? So, no. and that's another thing where kind of discussing this, and obviously we understand why Kyle and Kyron don't play, right? And so you get it. But from like a game analysis standpoint, it really hurt them in this game. Yeah. Because you need your stars. Just imagine if Kyle and Kyron did play and Jalen Warren and Malcolm Rodriguez did not.
That's the equivalent.
Difference. Like, it's just a huge difference.
Well, Jalen Warren didn't play in the Big 12 championship game, and exactly. I think they would have won the Big 12 if Warren would have played. Right.
So it's just like not having those guys. It just makes such a huge difference. Like, those are your stars. Like, that's why those guys are why Notre Dame is like a number 5 caliber team.
100%. And I think Notre Dame isn't so Ohio State had those guys opt out, and obviously, but you look at it, you're like, oh, now they're just gonna throw it to Jackson Smith Najaiba more, and I mean, you see what he can do, right? And obviously, they've recruited like 5-star guys behind that. They have guys there. Notre Dame doesn't have another Kyle Hamilton, and I think and I understand why fans are salty about these guys because they would have won that game if obviously those guys played. But I mean, obviously, we totally support those guys, and I think they made the right decision for themselves, right? Like, absolutely. And their teammates have supported them too, right? So it's not just like, that's not just lip service. They actually support them. So,
it's just the fact of the matter. Like, it's just you needed him,
and Notre Dame is just not in a position. Maybe that's why, and that's why everyone should be excited about Marcus Freeman because being the head coach, because they're going to recruit this class and then the 2023 class that they're already, lights out going in. You want to be in a position where you're saying, well, man, what are we going to do? Kyle Hamilton's not. Well, I guess this means Peyton Bowen gets a start. Right. That's what you want to be in a situation where you're doing that. And it's not like Notre Dame doesn't have, like, in the backfield, like Tyree, obviously made a lot of plays in this game. Diggs, did some good stuff. He had some bad stuff, but he did some good stuff too. But there's a pretty big drop off between them and Kyron, right? And there's obviously a massive drop off with not having Kyle Hamilton, right? And they're just not in a position. Just imagine if Isaiah Foskey, the impact he made in this game, take those 2 plays that he made, the forced fumble and the sack out of the game. I mean, it changes the complexion of the game, right? Yeah. So you have to have your top guys, and it's hard. I do think, it's you can't. You judge Notre Dame, but then you say, well, all of a sudden, Mike Elston looks like a much better defensive coordinator if he's got Kyle Hamilton. Just like Marcus Freeman is a better defensive coordinator when he has Kyle Hamilton. Everyone is, players make the coach. They always have, right? They always have. They make it easier. You can, the playbook is more open when you can have a Hamilton because you can call different things and he can do so many different things.
Yeah. Let's do the fatigue bit and how just that kind of had just an effect on everybody. Because it's pretty glaring when you watch it. Oh, this isn't it. I'm going to find it. So there's the drive, I think, that ties the game where they are just everyone is just basically jogging around the field and they can't. There you go. Here we go. Okay. So share screen. There we go. All right. So here we go. So this is in the middle of the drive. And as you can see, the Notre Dame defense is looking at the sideline, right? You see Kurt Hinish here.
Yeah.
He's obviously wanting to play, right? And Oklahoma State is up and ready
on the
to
ball.
go. They're on the ball. They're ready to go. And they snap it. And look, they're running bubble. No one is over here, right? Yeah. So you just have a one-on-one block. They're running bubble. And again, this is the middle of the drive, right? As you can see, Bertrand, you could tell he's already tired. Okay, so look, their coaches are throwing him on the field. Get back out there, right? So here we go. Now you put him in dollar. Now look at how these guys get off line of scrimmage here, these receivers. They're exhausted. They cannot run. But it's you're running up for a second and turning around.
Yeah.
Right. And you got Justin Adamalola, he's tired. So he's not really focused. He's just I need to drop to the curl.
But mentally, they have an edge on Notre Dame. And I think that's what people, don't think about in that kind of thing. When you're the one dictating when the ball is snapped, you have the edge. Right. And that's why you see, even though, you're like, well, they ran the same amount of plays on offense. Well, they know when the ball is going to be snapped. They know the play. So you're on defense, you're reacting to what they're doing. And especially if the call isn't in late or it's not in at all, that, you're at such a disadvantage there. Right. And, you got to give you credit to to Oklahoma State. And really the only way, and people say, well, how do you prepare for it better? Obviously you get to call in sooner, all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the main thing is how do you do it? You got to make a play to get them off schedule. So you have to make like a tackle for loss. You got to bat down a ball at the line of scrimmage, like something, right? You have to, pick off a ball, something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Havoc rate was 7.3%, which is like pretty horrible, right? And and then I think Oklahoma State, their defense, and they ran the same amount of plays. Well, they had an 18% Havoc rate. It's a huge difference, right? And
and they ran the same amount of plays, but Notre Dame is not going at 2
They're not at the same pace.
The
pace is different. Plays, whatever. It's different. It's different. It's very different, right?
I just want to point out before we run this that this receiver is about 1 yard offsides. That's uncalled.
Yeah.
I just noticed it right now. So, but speaking of Havoc rate, right? So again, this 2nd and 1. Now look at Bertrand. He's exhausted the way he's coming
exhausted.
Up here.
But 100%, you got to make this tackle.
He's a free runner. You got to make it, and he misses. And now we're going again. And now we're just like everyone's chasing. Now look at him, like Bertrand. You could just tell his body language. He's exhausted. He's coming in here. He's not coming in very hard. Any kind of move, and his feet are in sand.
All of a sudden, you make that sack there, and then it's 2nd and long,
and you reset.
Yeah, 2nd and long instead of 1st and goal.
And just again, look how Tay Martin comes off line of scrimmage. This player right here, he's not flying off line of scrimmage.
No,
he's
not.
But it's like you just turn and throw, and there's the ball, and it's a touchdown. And that's how it happens, right? So like none of that is scheme problem, right? Like there's no scheme issue with that. That's just simply our players are tired. They're not reacting. They're not making plays. They're just kind of going through the motions, right? They're just trying to catch air, and plays are just kind of happening around them before they can get their bearings or anything. And so,
and the one other thing I wanted to mention about so if you're like 2nd and 16, well, there's not a lot of good calls for the offensive coordinator on 2nd and 16. The playbook is shrunk. You can only do so much there. 1st and 10, everything's open, right? 3rd and short, 2nd and short, everything's open. 2nd and forever, you can only do so much. You're just trying to get yards to get back and thing. You're just hoping like, man, hopefully we get a shot on 3rd down. We have a chance to make a 3rd down here. So they're probably not going to go on the ball. Like they're going to, they're not going to huddle because they don't huddle, but they're going to wait. The OC is going to go through his chart and look at everything and just be like, okay, run this, whatever.
You get an extra 10 seconds, extra 15 seconds.
And that makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference, right? And then, all of a sudden too, like, timing's off and you're like, those other guys are still tired too, and whatever. All of a sudden, it's just maybe that play that needs to be crisp to be able to do it isn't going to be as crisp, right? And it makes a huge that's kind of all Notre Dame really needed was make that one play there. That changed it. All of a sudden, 3 instead of 7, right? And that the complexion of the game changes.
Right. Yep.
I don't think we really need to hit on anything else. I think we kind of hit on it, but you can see when we're going through it how it's not a simple answer. It's not a simple answer. It's not to be like, well, coaches did a bad job. It's like, well, in this thing, they didn't do a good job. But it's like, well, if these guys tackled in this one, they got to make a tackle. And then there's, the tempo part of it. Obviously, there was more calls that we could have shown that they did
a ton of calls. Listen, a terribly officiated game. It like awful. Like watching it back, it's glaring. It's glaring how bad it was. Right. So we're not going to make a show based on just like all the awful calls because like you give up 600 yards of offense, right? Like you need to talk about the breakdowns.
Although that would be, I think I'd watch that. I just watch a bunch of just bad calls by refs.
I'd tell you,
I'd watch it. But
like we said before, 72 passes Notre Dame threw, 0 defensive holding, 0 pass interference.
That is also insane because
Seems unlikely.
to say that Oklahoma State is physical in the secondary is being generous.
Yeah.
I mean, they commit penalties just on every play, and they're not going to call it on every play. But the key is they call it 5 times a game, and that helps you out. And when they don't call it at all, well,
right. And
that
it's
makes it
then it's 3rd and 10 instead of 1st and 10. It's just like it's a big deal.
Yeah, definitely. Well, anyways, I hope everyone enjoyed that. Hope everyone, I mean, maybe it's not enjoyable to go back over that stuff, but I think everyone, hopefully you have a better understanding of, why things went wrong in this game.
Right.
And I think we should finish it saying all this stuff is very fixable, like how they approach tempo, how whoever the new defensive coordinator is, how they're going to handle that in terms of, what they're going to do with matching personnel. What they're going to do if Mike Elson's only worrying about the defense line, because, and I will say, Mike Elson, there are times too where I've watched and I'm like, why is the number 2 defensive line out there? This is the red zone. Get those guys off there. That happens from time to time, but it's not a frequent thing. I think Mike Elson, obviously a veteran coach, done a great job. He does a pretty good job in the rotations. This game, I didn't think it was good. Some of it was tempo, some of it was, I think he didn't do like you showed with the example of, this is the time to switch, right? So, but I think that won't be as big of a problem if he's not worrying about getting the call in and all that too, right? So, and obviously, Bertrand, guys like that who had bad games and stuff, there's going to be obviously competition there for their spots. And then also that is the main thing too. You want to have other options where to say, man, JD Bertrand just not having a good game today. Well, okay. If say he's playing Mike next year and he's not doing well, Bo Bauer, who, we expect to come back. Well, Bo's going to take some of these snaps. Right. And that's where you can get a situation where they're in a situation where Bertrand didn't have a good game. Lewis didn't have a good game. What were their options?
Right.
They didn't have the options in this game. So,
right. And you get them playing 35 snaps instead of, 90. And it, like to kind of echo what you said, like I think a lot of this was this game specific.
Yeah.
To where you're down a coach, right? Head coach or anyone, you're down a coach, right? Your defensive coordinator is now forced, is not, I don't say forced. He's the head coach now. So you don't have your normal defensive coordinator. And so therefore your defensive line coach is now calling the defense. So it just, there's the effect, the domino effect of, how that affects the whole operation there. So, and Marcus Freeman, right? Like he's not fully clued into the game management stuff because he's still probably thinking about the defense, right? Like he's never done it before. And now he's got to, for the first time ever, he's thinking about the defense and what to do. And he's thinking about game management as a head coach. So it's just, this game, so many things happened that exacerbated kind of the issues that could have come up. And, you get a full staff in there, you've done it before. So, like people talk about, the positives that can come from this. Well, Marcus Freeman got his first taste of what it is to go through tempo as a head coach and how to manage that sort of thing. So that's definitely something to learn from.
And you're playing a team where they played at the last back half of the season. You play teams, you get a 28-7 lead. Those teams fold. Oklahoma State isn't one of those teams. Right. And that's a lesson learned, right? It's a lesson learned. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Hope everyone enjoyed it. And we'll be back later in the week with something pretty cool. Hope you enjoyed that too. Thanks for watching.